Welcome to Tabernacle Talk. Tabernacle Talk is a Bible study podcast from Tabernacle Baptist Church in Essex, Maryland. We hope that this podcast will help you to know Christ, grow in His Word, and show His love to others. Let's dive right in. Hello, and welcome back to Tabernacle Talk. Today we are in Psalm 88, and this is an incredible song. And I've probably put more work into studying this particular one than almost any of the others that we have looked at in Book 3 of Psalms, and that is in large part actually due to a great old book from the 1800s written by Charles Spurgeon that's called The Treasury of David, and it walks through Psalms. And so I actually just read through a bunch of what Spurgeon, he was a pastor in the late 1800s in London, and he's been called the Prince of Preachers, and certainly that was shown one more time to me as I was reading through. So I highlighted just a couple of things from his book that as we look at the Psalm today, I want to bring out to you guys because they were just such an encouragement to me. And I've heard it often said, it's a great thing to read and learn from and be discipled by dead people. The one sad side is we can't see their life, so often we can't see it in action. We can't imitate them in that way. But there is great joy in knowing, okay, this person's not going to, turn their back on God and reject being a Christian or something at some point. Like, they're already with the Lord. They've run their race, and I know that they were faithful in doing so. So let's read through Psalm 88 together. The inscription says, a psalm of the sons of Korah for the choir director, according to Mahalath Leanoth, a maskil of Heman the Ezrahite. All right, two brief things. Here, where it says, according to Mahalath Leanoth, this would be like a tune. This was the song title. Some translators have put this as a song for a time of sickness, particularly like recurring long illness. And I know many people that listen even to this podcast, you have gone through that, and it has been just chronic sickness in your life. And this is a great psalm to meditate on for you and for those that are in all sorts of troubles. Verse number 1, Yahweh, God of my salvation, I cry out before you day and night. May my prayer reach your presence. Listen to my cry. For I have had enough troubles, and my life is near the grave. I am counted among those going down to the pit. I am like a man without strength, abandoned among the dead. I'm like the slain lying in the grave, whom you no longer remember, and who are cut off from your care. You have put me in the lowest part of the pit, in the darkest places, in the depths. Your wrath weighs heavily on me. You've overwhelmed me with all your waves. Selah. You have distanced my friends from me. You have made me repulsive to them. I'm shut in and cannot go out. My eyes are worn out from crying. Yahweh, I cry out to you all day long. I spread out my hands to you. Do you work wonders for the dead? Do departed spirits rise up to praise you? Selah. Will your faithful love be declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Will your wonders be known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of oblivion? But I call to you for help, Yahweh. In the morning, my prayer meets you. Yahweh, why do you reject me? Why do you hide your face from me? From my youth I've been suffering and near death. I suffer your horrors. I am desperate. Your wrath sweeps over me. Your terrors destroy me. They surround me like water all day long. They close in on me from every side. You have distanced loved one and neighbor from me. Darkness is my only friend. This is not necessarily one of those psalms where the author describes the full picture. this is one of those Psalms when, sometimes when you're going through a struggle, a difficulty, and you tell it to your spouse, you tell it to a friend, and they immediately come in with, "Oh, hey, you need to do this and this and this, and you can fix that right up." And you're like, "No, I don't want you to fix this right now. I have thought through solutions, but right now, I just need you to know that I'm hurting." That's where He-Man is in this particular passage. This is just the cry out to God from a heart, not one that ends with, "God, I know that you are this and this and this, and I know that your word says this will occur." And this is not one of the ones that says, "But then I looked and I considered, or I went into your temple." This is just for one of those moments when you need to sit in grief at the broken, sin-cursed world that we live in and pour out your heart to God. And it is good to do that sometimes. God is not unaware of the fact that often we can't process every difficulty that we're going through on this side of Eden, that we're not able to process all of it at once. And so sometimes we just need to sit in grief, like Job sat with his 4 friends in grief for those 6 or 7 days of silence before they started talking. And sometimes we just need that time. Think of Jesus, even in Gethsemane, where he's sweating great drops of blood and he's asking God, "God, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me." And he doesn't go on, at least we don't have it written in Scripture, where he says, "God, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. But I know that I'm going to save everyone. But I know that I'm going to redeem our people back." He doesn't say that. It's just a moment of, "God, here's how I'm feeling right now." And I'm so thankful that our God allows us to take that to him. He is not unfeeling or unknowing of our physical and emotional and mental infirmities, incompleteness, our inability to fully understand the mind and ways of God, especially in this fallen world that has sorrow and sickness and death and sin and evil in it. And I'm reminded of Hebrews chapter 4, where the writer there wrote that we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, but he was in every point tested like we are, yet without sin. And because of that, we can come boldly to the throne of grace and find strength to help in time of need. So let's look now at what the psalm says. So first, he talks about his prayer going out to God. He starts off, kind of the only bright spot, if you will, in the whole psalm is that opening line, "Yahweh, God of my salvation." He says, "God, I know that you have saved me, and that's about as far as I've got right now. Everything else feels like it's up in the air." And so he says, "I cry out before you day and night." This is that cry that just won't stop. When I put my daughter Evelyn down for a nap, or when my wife does, normally she'll be very upset about having to go to sleep, and so she'll cry really big and she'll make a loud sound for about 30 seconds, and then she goes to sleep. I have also been a parent in those times when that cry does not stop right away. And certainly this is what Heman is crying out to God for. It is one that lasts day and night. This is a non-stop prayer and call to God. This does not mean that God's not listening to you if you keep on praying for the same request and God has not answered it in the way that you want yet. He is still listening to you. I love what Spurgeon wrote here. He said, "Perhaps if Heman's pain had not been incessant, his supplications might have been intermittent. It is a good thing that sickness will not let us rest if we spend our restlessness in prayer." I want to read that one more time. Perhaps if Heman's pain had not been incessant, his supplications might have been intermittent. He might have only prayed every now and then if he didn't have this incessant pain. But incessant pain led to incessant prayer. It's a good thing that sickness will not let us rest if we spend our restlessness in prayer. He says, day and night are both suitable to prayer. It is no work of darkness. Therefore, let us go with Daniel and pray when men can see us. Yet, since supplication needs no light, let us accompany Jacob and wrestle at Jabbok till the day breaks. I love this. He says, if you pray in the day, super great. You can be like Daniel and pray where the king's men, they saw him praying. And so we can pray in the daytime because it's not you can pray when times are not nighttime as well. But he says, but you also don't need the sun in order to pray. And so you can be like Jacob, wrestling with God all night and saying, I will not let you go until you bless me. And he says, and we can pray like Jacob there. In both the daytime and the nighttime are great times to pray to the Lord. And then I love this last quote here. Evil is transformed to good when it drives us to prayer. Evil is transformed to good when it drives us to prayer. And I love that thought. Then verse 2, I've had enough troubles. My life is near the grave. I'm counted among those going down to the pit. I'm like a man without strength, abandoned among the dead. I'm like the slain lying in the grave, whom you no longer remember and who are cut off from your care. He says, God, right now it just feels like I'm dead. I am abandoned. I'm alone. I'm one of the people that they're dead on the battlefield. And so there's no one's helping to bandage my wounds. No one's coming and picking me up and rescuing me. He says, I'm just lying there right now. And that's how it feels in my life with you, God. It feels like I'm just headed straight for the grave and you're not doing anything about it. And I can think even of Jesus, I'll say it now, though many of the other portions of the passage echo Jesus on the cross, where he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from me? And that's how Heman feels in this psalm. He says, you've put me in the lowest part of the pit, in the darkest places, in the depths. He says, it feels like, if you will, I'm going through hell, that just death and sorrow and grief and pain, that's what I'm feeling right now. He says, your wrath weighs heavily on me, and you have overwhelmed me with all of your waves. You can think back to the flood with Noah. He says, I feel like your judgment has come on me. Or you can think about the Pharaoh and the Egyptians as they were passing through the Red Sea and the waters came in on them. That water is often a picture of God's judgment. This would be kind of one of the psalms in the mind of Jonah, the prophet, as he literally goes into the waves and then is swallowed there by that large fish. He says, you've distanced my friends from me. You have made me repulsive to them. I'm shut in and cannot go out. And I'm going to try and see. I think I have one highlight here. He says, Spurgeon said about this, about your loved ones, your friends abandoning you or seemingly abandoning you in tough times. Spurgeon said, even when they are near me bodily, they are so unable to swim with me in such deep waters that they stand like men far away on the shore while I am buffeted with the billows. But alas, they shun me. The dearest lover of all is afraid of such a distracted one, and those who took counsel with me avoid me now. Jesus experienced this when his disciples abandoned him once the troops came with Judas Iscariot. And Jesus knows what it's like to feel like no one wants to be around him, that it is shameful to be around him. It's too sad. It's too difficult to be around this person. And maybe you feel in that situation, but I want you to know God has not abandoned you. And as we look at the life of Jesus, God may be working in a specific time that you don't have people that understand what you're going through so that you would cry out to God. Um, when Jesus is the only friend you have left, that's often when we discover that he's the only friend that we truly need. And then God brings back others, as Jesus, got back all of the disciples except for Judas. And so we can remember that. He says, my eyes are worn out from crying. Yahweh, I cry out to you all day long. He says, I've cried and I can't even cry anymore. There was a great phrase that said, tears are great and refreshing when they come in showers, but when they come like a flood, it is not a good situation. And I know I've been there before, and I'm certain many of you have. And he says, I spread out my hands to you. This would be like the little child reaching up for their parent to say, would you pick me up? And I'm thankful for a God that, though we don't often feel it, he is there for us. And he does pick us up, and he does hold us in his hand, and his spirit never leaves us, and he never forsakes us. And Jesus is always interceding on our behalf, and the Father is always working and loving. And though we do not experience it in the tangible way that we wish we could, may we not forget the love of our God in times when we experience these emotions. Verse number 10, he says, do you work wonders for the dead? Do departed spirits rise up to praise you? Will your faithful love be declared in the grave, your faithfulness in destruction? Will your wonders be known in the darkness, or your righteousness in the land of oblivion? Here, speaking from the Old Testament understanding of the afterlife, and then also speaking humanly. That is, we know, especially with Christ and opening up the way into heaven, we know that if we are dead, if we are a departed spirit, if we are one that has gone to the grave, now we know we are with the Lord. But from a human standpoint, when I'm gone, this mouth is no longer going to tell other people the gospel. I'm no longer going to be able to preach the word and to say the things that I wish that I could say. I'm not going to be able to sing praises to the Lord anymore with this particular physical mouth when I die. And so here Heman says, God, like let's make a deal. If I'm alive, I can sing about you. I can tell others about your goodness. So God, would you keep me alive? Would you make it so that I can boast and tell other people about how amazing it is of what you did and the miracles you wrought, that I'm no longer like the dead person that's left alone on the battlefield, but that I am one that is risen. I am one that has not experienced this grave and death and oblivion and darkness. And what a joy it is for us as believers today, that when we die, we know the promise of Jesus in John 14, that he has gone into heaven to prepare a place for us, so that where he is, we can be there with him. Certainly, I'm not I'm not looking forward to the process of dying, but I have no fear of death. I can't wait to be with my Savior, and I hope that that's your prayer as well. That when we pass from this life, we enter into the presence of God that we were made for. And one day, when God brings heaven back down to earth, where he intended it from the beginning with the creation of Eden, that as we have that new Jerusalem, as there is no more sickness and pain and night and death and chaos, that we are able to enjoy forever the kind of life that God intends for us, but that we do not experience right now because of sin. But this time period is just a blip. My friend Myron Campbell loves how the Message paraphrase talks about, I think it's 2 Corinthians 3, it might be 1 Corinthians 3, where kind of the classic translation is, I reckon that the sufferings of this time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that will be revealed hereafter. And the message paraphrases it something along the lines of, the troubles that we have now are small potatoes. And I'm so grateful that this sickness, this body, this sin that I struggle with now, it is not the end. It is not forever. And in 100 million billion years from now, I will not remember all of the hard times that I went through. I will remember the goodness of God that saved me and loved me and adopted me into his family and saved so many others and created paradise, that place that we so long for in our soul, a place where there's no more questioning, God, why is this happening? At least not in a bad way. We might look around and see all the goodness of God and go, God, why is this happening to me? Like, this is incredible. But we will no longer have those regrets and those hurts. Thankful, closing out today in verse number 18, you have distanced loved one and neighbor from me. Darkness is my only friend. And I think about Jesus when he died, and he died on the cross, and you had that eclipse, that darkness that came over the earth. I think it was about 3 hours is what Matthew records for us. And because the loved one, the Father, and because the friends, the disciples, abandoned Jesus and deserted him, and because he experienced the darkness, and because he went to the grave, this place of death and oblivion, that now I will never know that darkness. I will never know the grave that Jesus went into, because I have experienced the forgiveness and the adoption that comes from Jesus Christ. And I hope that that is your rejoicing as well today, that we will never know an abandonment like Jesus knew. We will never know rejection as Jesus knew it. We will never know pain as Jesus knew it. But we will know the Father that Jesus knew. We will know the home that Jesus knows. I'm looking forward to heaven. I'm sure there are many, many, many songs that I could link about heaven. I will do this one. There's a great song, I think it's by Matt Redman, called One Day When We All Get to Heaven. I will link that one in the show notes. And I would encourage you to listen to it. Great lyrics that highlight this heart of hope. So thanks for tuning in today. Tomorrow we close out book 3 of Psalms, and then we'll begin in 1 Peter, and looking forward to that time together.